tell you what, I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you what, I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you what, I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you what, I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you what.
Hey, how's it going? Welcome to Tell You What, the podcast. My name is Mike, and you were just listening to the worldwide debut of our new podcast theme music, composed and recorded by McLaughlin. Isn't it awesome? Let's listen again for a minute, in case you weren't paying attention.
Tell you what, I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you what, I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you what, I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you what, I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you what.
It's so good, don't you think? You'll be humming that tune for the rest of the day. Shane did a bang-up job on that piece of music for us. He's available to work with you if you need some music commissioned, anything in that general area. You can reach him through Instagram at Shane Luke McLaughlin, also at his website, shanemclaughlinmusic.com. Shane's a member of the band Buffalo Rose, favorites of ours here at Tell You What, so you can reach him via their website as well. I'll post his contact info links on the episode page of the podcast website. Okay, so our guest today for episode number 54 of Tell You What, the podcast, is Nashville musician and songwriter Gabe Lee. When I say Nashville musician, I mean Nashville born and raised, which I think is a first for this podcast. We've had lots of guests who have moved there, but Gabe has an interesting perspective on the town, having grown up there and seen the changes in Music City over the decades. Gabe's latest album, his fourth in 4 years, is called Drink the River, and it is chock full of superb songwriting and beautiful string band arrangements. It was interesting to hear Gabe talk about how he likes to change his approach on the various albums he has recorded, choosing for this one a more stripped-down sound. Gabe also spends some time talking about the community of musicians he is part of in Nashville and beyond, how important this community is to him, and how he tries to work to develop and enhance it. I happen to have an anecdote to share to back up Gabe's talk. I first saw Gabe play up at the Mile of Music Festival in Wisconsin just this year. I've talked about how awesome that festival is before, one reason being that they treat artists so well, and the musicians have time to hang and bond with their pals and other bands while they were all up there together. So the aforementioned band Buffalo Rose was also up at the fest, and the Buffalo Rose crew met up with Gabe. Both Buffalo Rose and Gabe were selected as part of the lineup for the fun Cayamo Cruise Journey Through Song next year, so they bonded over that and I guess spent some time hanging out late night, and evidently some whiskey may have been involved. The reason I say this is that I heard from Buffalo Rose that they left Wisconsin, headed to Colorado for the next gig, and when they arrived at the venue, there waiting for them was a fresh bottle of whiskey, which their brand new pal Gabe had called ahead and bought for them. A cool gesture for sure, and reinforces what Gabe talks about in our chat about how he values this community of musicians and he is so happy to be part of it. So do check out Gabe's new record, Drink the River. It is quite good, and as he says, no matter where you are, there's a decent chance he'll be coming near you on tour sometime the next year, so look out for that. For now, enjoy this Tell You What discussion with Gabe Lee. All right, Gabe Lee, welcome to Tell You What, the podcast. Thanks so much for taking the time to meet with us today.
Yeah, tell you what, it is nice to drop in. Thanks for having me.
Sure. Let's set the scene for our listeners. I'm currently in the Tell You What Studios Epiplex, high above the teeming metropolis of Evanston, Illinois. You are in Denver. Do I have that right?
Yep. I'm in a Hilton garden in Denver.
Hilton Garden, not literally a garden.
No, I wish. We're in Mile High City. I'm on the road here with a couple friends this weekend. I'm opening for a great country rock band called Muscadine Bloodline. I'm just support act, so it's just me and my acoustic guitar, and they're a blast. They're a great team. So that's what's brought me out to Colorado, and we're even going to Utah on Sunday. So that's why I'm out here this weekend.
Excellent. You seem to be on the road a lot. Is that something you're comfortable with, maybe drawn to, or is it just part of the life you have chosen to get your music out there and make a living?
Oh, it's definitely both. It's the last couple of years are the first opportunities that I've been given to really hit the road, and I've been doing a lot of booking myself, and my managers, we've been kind of doing our own booking and finding shows and whatnot, and this can range from great tours, headlining tours, or even support acts for bigger bands to little private shows, like little backyard barbecues and playing in people's barns or people's back decks or whatever. So yeah, we've kind of done it all in the last couple of years and are hoping to do bigger and better and more. Yeah, I'll tell you what, it beats bartending on Broadway, and I absolutely love traveling. And I mean, geez, we went all the way to the UK this past year, and we even went to Sweden for 3 weeks.
Wow!
So we're constantly learning. It is a lot to get used to, for sure. Like being away from family, dogs, girlfriends, those kind of things.
You might want to change the order there. You put your dog ahead of the.
No. I said it exactly how I meant. There's I don't think I'll ever get fully used to that. And geez, like if I ever think about settling down and maybe having a family and all that, I'm very inspired by some of my colleagues who've been doing it for a long time, who managed to raise families and still be on the road and be rock stars, but also kind of live normal lives at home. It's a balance that I will always be chasing, I guess. But right now we are full tilt on the road. We are all over the place. My Southwest credit card has gone bonkers, and we're not saying no to anything. We're taking every show that we can get, because that's how it's kind of got to be.
Good. Okay, let's back up a little bit, or a lot actually. You were born and raised in Nashville, Tennessee, right? We will get to that aspect in a bit. But for now, let's talk about your musical life at home. Your mom is a talented musician. Do I have that right? Piano player?
Yeah, she's a great pianist and even a composer.
So there was always music around your house growing up?
Oh yeah, and we had one of my mom's prized possessions is she has a little baby grand in the living room downstairs, and so yeah, I mean, she would play for the church, and she used to give piano lessons, and like I said, compose. So she was constantly practicing and writing, and it would not be out of the ordinary to wake up on a weekend morning, and hear music drifting upstairs, and it's very comforting for me to go back to those kind of memories, because it's absolutely where love and respect for music began. Even though as a kid practicing piano for 2 hours a day is not really is not on every kid's to-do list, but I absolutely am grateful for that training and that background today.
So you trained as a classical pianist.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, classical music is beautiful and it's impressive. It's such a great way to learn as far as like theory. However, it's very time consuming to commit yourself to that genre of art, of music. It requires so much commitment, dedication, practice time, and essentially being responsible for learning the piece. Like if you're in a symphony, right, or you're playing a concerto, or all these things. And I always noticed, like in band or in choir growing up, like I'd always get recruited to play the support piano for like a church choir or something, and I would sing too. I felt like piano was kind of isolated because there's no when you're playing in a band, right, there's like first chair, second chair, third chair, like you have a team or you have a rhythm section, a percussion session, and the piano is always off on its lonesome. And And I kind of was turned off by that too. So when I went to university, when I went to Belmont University for piano performance, I gave it a semester, and moved on to studying writing and journalism because I was looking for something else. I wanted to take my music education outside the classroom, if you will.
Yeah. Let's stick with the piano for a second. You talk about your mother being a composer as well as a classical player. How do you look at the creative aspect, if you were to compare it, the creative aspect of training as a classical pianist to what you do now as a singer-songwriter? Are there any parallels you can draw?
Melody. Melody is paramount, I think, in so many things. And so my ear goes to melodies probably quicker than lyrics. And there's when it comes down to the writing process, I would say they kind of arrive simultaneously because I chew on things forever. Like I chew on things for weeks or months and years, and have maybe a hook or a line that I've been waiting for a melody to come through on, or maybe I have that melody and I'm just waiting for a hook or a line, some lyrics. So, but
the classical training gave you a love for and a training in the melody aspect.
Yeah, and I would say like there's if we're talking about like songs that or pieces that pianists love to play, like Chopin. Mm-hmm. Just great, haunting, beautiful melodies. It's not hard to play. The left hand just provides a little bass cushion for the right hand melody just do its thing. There's all these little trills and just very romantic, emotional melodies. And so, that's kind of where it starts for me. I wish I could have just played little Chopin nocturnes my whole piano career and I would have been happy. But I had to put you had to progress and train and push on past that.
Yeah.
But when I think back to my classical piano days, I think that's something that I'll always look back on fondly, is those like clean melodies from composers like Chopin. That's
interesting. At some point you picked up the guitar.
Yeah. My dad had a guitar lying around the house, but I don't think I really picked it up till middle school. My buddies and I, we didn't take guitar lessons or anything. We would just pick up our dad's guitars and play along to old Leonard Skinner records or CCR or the band. Yep. And or just try to learn the Smoke on the Water riff or something, and
yes.
And that was kind of the intro into plucking on the guitar, which luckily being surrounded by my friends' parents' record catalogs, like there was so much good music. I didn't even know what I was listening to at the time. My parents didn't listen to Leonard Skinner. But when I was out with my buddies and hanging at their houses, which was like half my childhood, that's what we were listening to a lot.
Okay, so was it the guitar that led you to start writing songs, or had you been doing that on the piano?
I've been doing it a little bit, but the guitar is so conducive to writing. And even today, like the guitar is just so synonymous with folk music, country music, that when you're sitting down to write a song in that vein, you just can't go wrong, right?
Yeah.
Playing the keys is something that I love to incorporate into not only my live shows but also in the studio. And for instance, right now on the road with this band, they figured out I could play some piano, and so we've kind of added it as a party trick. At the end of their headliner set, I'll come on and play like 4 or 5 songs on the piano with them and back them up.
That must be fun.
Oh, it's a blast. And so that's definitely where I feel at home musically in a lot of ways. I don't have to think too much about like sitting down on a piano bench and plunking around, but writing is so much more intuitive on an acoustic guitar for me generally. And I think it might be the simplicity of it too, because
yeah,
I'm not like a virtuoso guitar picker. So like you hear the saying 3 chords and the truth is I think in some ways that definitely references the simplicity and the humbleness, the humble nature of an acoustic guitar, and only knowing a few chords. Like you see some of these guys, Molly Tuttle, Billy Strings, that can just set the guitar on fire with the way they're playing, and it's very impressive. Even Molly, I opened a few shows for Molly, and she's like, yeah, like notes, the amount of notes per minute that you can play is very cool, but like the song is still the most important thing. I think she was just trying to make me feel better.
I'll take it.
Yeah, but I do appreciate that sentiment, and when I do sit down to write, it's just comforting. Sometimes I'll pick up a mandolin or a banjo and just get a new perspective on a song or a melody that I'm working on, and that's helpful too.
But you will rarely go to the piano when you're writing?
Not necessarily. I'll hop on it. Sometimes I'll try songs like a million different ways. Just I'll move all the way up and down the scale and try to figure out what the best key is. And
okay.
And sometimes, like I said, I'll hop onto a mandolin and see if that changes, where I'm singing the melody. And for my Americana Fest this past September, I played my entire set from center stage piano. I led the band from the piano, like Billy Joel style.
Yeah.
And I want to incorporate that more because every Americana act these days has an acoustic guitar at the front.
Right.
Very few rock bands, hardly anymore, or country bands have a piano player sitting in the front leading the band.
Yeah.
And I think that's a tradition that is very badass as long as you have someone that can pull it off. And I'd like to keep working on that.
And room in your rent-a-car for the piano.
Jeez. Yeah, it's definitely a pain in the butt to get around.
Yeah.
But it's part of the culture of being a touring musician. And we're not at a point to where we have roadies or people that'll help us move our crap. It's just you just gotta do it yourself, and that's part of earning it too. So right now I rent a vehicle to travel with, and bring a band around. I'll usually go and rent a minivan or like a 12-passenger Ford Transit or something. And
yep.
I foresee in my future that my own little truck that I ride around in a lot is not going to take much more. So I'll probably be upgrading to like a Sprinter or something down the road because that's super popular among road dogs these days.
Yep.
So I'll be doing that until the money for the tour bus comes in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. All right. So let's go back again. You talked about starting to study piano in college, then you stopped. So when did you start writing your own music and performing your own songs in public? When did that transition happen?
My buddies and I were writing in middle school because I remember we had talent shows and all that, and my buddies and I, we knew one song, and it was "Stairway to Heaven."
Yeah.
And we played that for like 3 years at every talent show, but we did end up writing, and I was writing and then like delivering the melody and the lyrics to our lead singer. I wasn't the lead singer; I was just the piano player. He would take it and put his own spin on it, and it was pretty good. And in high school there was I went to high school in Nashville, like heart of Nashville, downtown pretty much, and we had a great internship program for a couple weeks, and I went to hang out at a local music label on Music Row. I had a song called it's called Something to Live For.
Yeah.
And I wrote that and recorded it with these dudes who, they were probably just looking for, some sort of charitable work or like, I don't know, some kind of tax exempt write-off by participating in this internship program. But they were so sweet. They invited me in. I was there for like a couple days. They created a demo, a work tape of my song for me and played along with it and sang along with it. And
that's great.
That was a very cool experience. Yeah, as like a junior in high school, and I had, fucking snot-nosed kid. I had no idea what I was doing. I had written songs and I had been performing them here and there. But really performing was also different to me, like by definition, because I was so used to playing in like recitals and music concerts. And,
yeah.
Jazz band and concert band and all that. So, we were always on and off the stage, even playing in church, like, singing in the choir and all that. So I was always being dragged to one stage or another. And I think the serious writing didn't happen till I had serious inspirations that probably came along in college and post-college when I was really delving into the writings of Paul Simon, Jeff Tweedy, John Prine, Jim Croce, like actually listening to what these folk singers had to say.
Yeah. You kind of led me into another question here when you talked about that internship in high school. I've interviewed a number of guests who make their musical home in Nashville. I think you are the first townie I've had, born and raised there. I tossed around different ways to talk about this, but let's keep it simple. Can you talk about maybe the pros and cons, or some pros and cons, as a songwriter, musician, of having grown up in Nashville?
I would say that as a local, there's definitely the occasional get off my lawn mentality,
yeah.
right? I mean, you got You got so many people moving in, and folks, folks are moving here for reasons besides music too. I mean, there's jobs, and there's a lot of youth. There's a lot of appeal, and then of course you got the tourist trade, and the busyness of your local hometown, which 25, 30 years ago was a completely different town,
right?
Right, and the busyness of that is definitely a little distracting at times, but I still, I maintain that, like, regardless of kind of the tourism aspect of a growing town, like, I mean, Nashville is still one of the best towns on the planet to be a songwriter, to be a musician, and to come here. And there's no guaranteed success. There's no guaranteed dream making that's happening here, but there is a guarantee that you're going to be motivated and you're going to be challenged. If you can take that challenge and turn it into inspiration, then this is the town for you. But people talk about how Nashville beats them down and how the industry's a grind and there's a bunch of sellouts and people are using everybody. And it's like, yeah, that's every business.
Yes,
it's every business, guys. This another thing I say, Mike. Like, if people weren't moving here with a guitar and a few $100 of savings and trying to, like, get in writers' rooms and make it, then the dream would be dead.
Right.
But the dream is very much alive because people are doing that, like, this moment. Some kid is packing up his or her guitar right now, moving to Nashville and wanting to become the next Luke Combs or the next Lainey Wilson, and that's good for music. I think that's great for the music community and great for music in general.
Yeah, that's great. I want to talk about your process a little more. Let's do it by discussing this most recent album of yours, this great album, Drink the River, your 4th studio record, right? Great sounding record. When I compare it to your previous work, I see differences in both style, that is the musical presentation, but also in the substance of the songs themselves. Let's talk about the style first. This one is relatively stripped down musically, right? You've assembled a string band here, bluegrass instrumentation, amazing musicianship. So how did you come to this decision in terms of stripping it down a bit?
We were going back into studio last winter simply to try some things out. I'd had a kind of a want and a desire to create a more rootsy, folk-driven string band sound, anyways. And that when I tour, I'm honestly playing usually with a trio or a trio of myself on acoustic, a bass player, a slide player, and then occasionally a fourth who's a fiddle player. Very much like our good friends Buffalo Rose, right?
Yeah.
And that, because you can deliver a lot of really great energy with just a string band. Yeah, and I was wanting to go back into the studio and create something more similar to that vibe instead of the alt rock and the more honky tonk stuff that I worked on in the past. And the motivation to create music that's not all the same too is important to me. And
right.
I think folks look at some of the past records and they say, like, wow, Gabe's really, like, he's really jumped off, the edge here, and now he's swinging all the way back to bluegrass and folk, and, like, can he focus on one thing? And the answer is, probably no, because I enjoy it so much, and also, like, I pose the question, back to the listeners. If you're an author, would you write the same book over and over again?
Right.
If you're a painter, would you paint the same painting over and over again? No. And so Nashville, again, chock full of pickers and great players. And I just hit up my buddy Jason Roller, who he plays electric guitar in a band you might have heard of called Alabama.
Yeah.
He is also a bluegrass savant. He was born with a fiddle in his hand, pretty much, and a lot of the fiddle and mandolin, banjo that you hear on my records in the past, if you've heard any of those things happening, it's probably Jason Roller. So Jason invited his buddy Eamon, who plays with 2 artists you may have heard of called Rodney Crowell and Emmylou Harris. And Eamon and Jason, they play in the Opry band. They're members of the Grand Ole Opry House band. So
wow,
they're insanely great players, needless to say. And I invited them both into the studio last winter to help me flesh out this record. We knew it was going to be stripped down. We knew there wasn't going to be any electric guitar. I think the only electric thing we have on it might be some steel. And we ended up, They ended up helping me create a phenomenal woody, dark, rootsy sound for this record that touches on a lot of difficult stories and a lot of darker issues. And I think it was appropriate because the nuances of bluegrass picking allows for some of these stories to stand out because the craft, the tradition of storytelling in bluegrass and folk music like that, from the Appalachians to the swamps, that kind of acoustic, haunting, music and melodies are meant to tell a story.
Yes.
And by kind of giving the rhythm section a break, like giving the drums a break, giving the organ a break, giving the electric guitar a record off, it felt really good, and it kind of it felt like coming out of a storm a little bit. Things kind of were more clear, and I could focus more. I could work on being a better singer and lyricist, and allowing myself to kind of work on those things as well was really helpful. But players like that if you're interested in checking out the record Drink the River, like if you're just listening to it for the first time, these are phenomenal players, and they make me sound a lot better. I'll say that.
I'll tell you, it does sound amazing. The arrangements are just beautiful. You started to get into this other area where I see the differentiation from your previous work, and that is in the subject matter. You seem here maybe to be more focused on telling other people's stories with this record rather than maybe the personal observation or personal stories from your previous work. Do I have that right?
Absolutely. I was kind of collecting stories from people in my past and people that I've worked with. This is mostly kind of like my community growing up in Nashville, and then also my experiences working tending bar in Nashville, and also my recent kind of time on the road and meeting all these great music communities, and experiencing what the music has done for some of these music communities.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily just my own, but occasionally, on a very personal level, we get folks that share about what they're going through. If I'm meeting someone after a show or meeting someone at the merch table, and every once in a while, we get folks who are wide open about what's been going on in their lives and how important music is to them. And so I felt that it was appropriate to make the record more comprehensive by focusing pretty much completely on the stories written by others, or told by others, and throwing my own spin on it, obviously. But and that's something I've always enjoyed. Even among some of my own work that is maybe more fictional, or there's usually a spin of like, hey, I've felt this before, even though I've never actually lived it. I felt something very similar to this. So the emotions are real, but the stories may not be completely 100% true.
Right.
On Drink the River, these stories are the closest to truth that I've ever told.
All right, I want to get into the weeds of the process of songwriting a little bit as we discuss this further. This storytelling aspect, using some of these songs as a guide. I want to talk about point of view in songwriting. Right, in your previous albums, you sang from first person perspective, right? The point of view you were just talking about, yourself, the narrator. Even if the songs aren't true, they were theoretically from the perspective of the songwriter singing the song, right? But now you're telling someone else's story, and to do that, you could use third person format, right? There is this person, I will now tell you about them and their life. But in a couple of these songs, you choose to take first person perspective. You sing from the point of view of this other person, right? And this is a creative choice you are making, and I think it's interesting and worth talking about. It happens a lot less than people might realize in songwriting, because I think it's really hard to pull off very well, and you do that here. I think of like Bruce Springsteen doing this, maybe Randy Newman, of course, John Prine, right, with Angel from Montgomery. So this is something you could have taken in a couple different directions. Let's take the song Marigold, dig into this a little. This is sung from the perspective of a husband who's losing his wife to cancer, right? So can you talk about the decision to write from this perspective? Was it difficult? Did the story just present itself that way to you? Did you consider doing it a different way?
It felt like the situation dictated the way the story was going to be told, at least in my writer's brain. So I've met this couple before, and the husband is now the only one left. I mean, him and the kids, they're the survivors, and so when I met them, about a year and a half ago now, it was his story. You know, it was his story that he was telling, and I felt that pretty deeply. And I wanted also to communicate through recording a song like this, somebody else's story, is that this situation is not simply limited to a little family in a nowhere town, Marigold, Mississippi. Mm-hmm. This is something that people all across the world have experienced, this type of loss. And so I would say that I probably naturally moved towards singing from a first person on this song because I know the husband, and I know him better than I knew his wife. And so his perspective also was probably something that I felt like I could put a voice to better. And I think it makes it more personal.
Definitely, yeah.
And that's another reason why this record in general, this record is seeking to invite folks and listeners to explore their empathy, and dig in, to their sympathies and their empathy, to understand that, it could be a house down the road, it could be a house on the other side of the world. There are people, within these communities that have experienced the same joy and love and loss and despair that you have, and hopefully that that makes the world a bit of a smaller place within stories like this one, like Marigold, and others on this record.
Last spring you cleaned out the cast iron, you hung it up. I've been hungry ever since. Nothing fills me up no more. Drinking sucks. It cars me up just thinking about it. Wish I could take you driving, we'd roll into town. See the Christmas lights up on the square, watching the sun go down, setting fire to the air. No honey, we ain't gotta go anywhere. Time to time we all lose something, but it ain't worth nothing to me. Like this, all broken. Lord, if you can hear me, I swear to leave you alone. Please pick up the phone. I want you to know you can take me when she goes. Marigold, 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 Marigold.
Here we have another first-person perspective song, Light a Cane, follows Marigold on this record. You really hit us with the feels with this 1-2 punch, by the way. I think that's what the kids say.
Yeah, hit us in the feels.
Yes.
Yeah. For sure.
Tell us the story behind this song, and then maybe you can show us the progression of how a song like this comes together. You have the thread of this person's story from, you can tell us, but I think from a relatively brief interaction, but then you build a story from that. Maybe you can walk us through that.
Yeah, this one is definitely inspired by an interaction I had in an Uber because I was headed to the hospital. My girlfriend's a travel nurse, and so I was flying in to Phoenix, Arizona, where my girlfriend was working, and I asked the Uber to take me to the hospital so I could go meet her for lunch. And every once in a while you'll get an Uber driver that is super talkative.
Yeah. Yep.
And sometimes you get ones that are that are just like taxi drivers and they don't say anything. But this one in particular, she mentioned that she'd actually just been at the hospital earlier in the week, the same one that she was dropping me off at, and she had a terrible diagnosis that she had early onset dementia. And as a listener in the back of her Uber ride, I mean, what do you say? Like, you're just like, holy shit, you know? And, but sitting in the back of this ride, for some reason, this lady is telling me about her personal life experience, about how it's very likely that she won't be able to recognize anyone or anything within the next 10 years, and her mind will slowly start to, slip away, which is just a terrible thought, and something that as any human, like, is terrifying. So that emotion from hearing that story inspired me to sit down eventually and write the song Lidocaine. It's a song that's packed with emotion, and I attached a lot of my own sort of like living and life to it. I kind of imagined what it would be like, if essentially I left home and never came back. Like, that's kind of what dementia is to me. Like, you're gone, and there's a ghost of you, but you're not yourself anymore. You're not there anymore. And I attached some personal living to it, as like what would I tell my mom? What would I tell my brother or my dad? Because her story to me was so compelling that I chewed on it for weeks and months.
Yeah.
Life is confusing at times. I mean, all the time. And if as a writer, staying inspired is the most important thing, and that's why I would say I source stories and inspiration from everywhere that I possibly can, and sometimes that means you stumble upon a lot of sadness and confusion and depression. This is what I discovered on the record and putting this record together is, so many folks out there are just dealing with crap, and it's okay. It's all right. If we can engage with listeners and remind them of some of these things that may feel like differences, but they're actually, I think, from my perspective, they have the power to bring people together. Yeah. In emotion and in empathy. I think that is why these stories have found their way onto this record. And when we sat down to record, it was 3 or 4 songs, a cover or two, and all of a sudden, working with these string players, I was like, oh, I have all these other songs, like, that I've just touched on, a little bit here and there, that I should probably finish up and see if they would work with this this genre that we're creating, this kind of like folk bluegrass vibe. And I think we succeeded.
Yeah, you sure did.
Ain't no telling where I'll be when the sun come up tomorrow. So make me laugh, make me cry, read me something happy from the Bible. Lord, I know I'm not insane, just I took a turn off memory lane. And did I pray? Didn't I pray not to forget you before I'm gone?
One of the things I love about your music, particularly this album, is the way the lyrics flow so beautifully within the songs. As a very amateur songwriter myself, I know how difficult it can be to fit the words you want to say, particularly when you come up with like a line or two that you really love, to fit them into the flow of the song's rhythm and the melodies. But your songs sound so natural, the words just kind of cascade out. It's almost like magic. It seems like a combination of lyric fitting and choosing the right words, right? But also, very importantly, the phrasing that you're using. Is this something you work at? Do you have any secret tricks that make it seem so effortless and work so well?
I'm a big reader. I love collections of short stories. I read them like a Bible, because there's two authors. Ron Rash, Ron Rash, amazing Southern folklore writer. And then there's an author named Frank Bill. I don't really know much about, but he has a collection of short stories called Crimes in Southern Indiana. And man, short stories accomplish so much within 10 pages.
Yeah.
And you don't have 400 pages to tell a plot and develop a character and have rising and falling action or whatever, the things you learn in literature class. And short stories pull those off so well within a concise amount of words that I've really fallen in love with reading these, specifically Ron Rash and Frank Bill, because short stories to me feel like tracks on a record. And there doesn't necessarily have to be a full, beginning and end life story of the characters. You're kind of just plopping in and living it for 4 minutes and 15 seconds.
Yeah.
And then you're out again. And isn't that why people turn on music in general is to feel something for a little bit and joy or despair, whatever it is, and to feel and feel like you've been taken away from your own emotions for the length of a record or even just the length of a song. I'm learning and I'm learning to be inspired by these great writers who are adept at not just storytelling, but adept at phrasing and delivering words on paper, written typed words.
Yeah.
And that's very, very similar to songwriting.
But they don't have to fit them into the framework of a song, though. That's the next level of the trick.
Man, it's a challenge and it's fun sometimes, and all writers will say this. Like sometimes it happens in one sitting. Like sometimes you can write a song in like 20 minutes, and then sometimes you'll grapple with it. And I've grappled with a couple songs on past records. There's a song on the record called "Even Jesus Got the Blues," and I first wrote the chorus of that probably 4 years ago.
Wow.
And it just worked on it. I'd pick it up and I'd put it down. I'd pick it up and I'd hate it and I'd put it down. But I kept it around. Like I kept going back to it because I knew there was something to it that I enjoyed and that I could work with if I learned enough about songwriting or learned enough about what the story was I was trying to tell.
Coming along now on muddy feet, crossing the churchyard. Better believe, spooking the God-fearing folks in the pews as the preacher gives the news. Even Jesus has got the blues.
As far as taking time to write songs, for me it's always been okay because I wouldn't go back to a song idea or a voice memo from like 2 years ago unless I felt like there was something worth mining and exploring and developing. So, but again, sometimes a song will fall in your lap and you're like, man, I'm a freaking genius. Like you sit down and a song comes out in 20 minutes and you feel good about it.
Don't you feel like we were talking about the Nashville publishing deal where these people get together and write a song in a day? Don't you sometimes wonder how much better one of those songs could have been if someone had taken a few weeks or months to make it what it could have become?
Sure. I mean, yeah, possibly. There's the Nashville songwriting pipeline. There's like 20, 30 guys, that and girls that have secured like the formula.
Yes.
Right. The formula for writing a hit country song. And
which changes over time, but they keep figuring it out, right?
Yeah. Well, they're also kind of creating the trend as they're riding the wave.
Yes.
But then you see folks like Luke Combs and Lainey Wilson that can do that, but also hold a lot of respect for their predecessors and the style of country singing that came before bro country and all that, commercial country. I think in general, we're in a really good spot for Americana folk. I mean, geez, like, just in the past 10 years, like all these incredible Americana artists just coming out of the woodwork, Yes. Like, I think we're in a great spot for music. And I think for a while there, I think before Randy Carlisle, before Jason Isbell, before Chris Stapleton, it was a little dicey, and we're all like, oh geez, like man, is it just gonna be like what's that clothing brand, Ed Hardy? Like, it's just gonna be Ed Hardy, like like Country Bros. Like, is it gonna be Florida Georgia Line for the rest of existence? It turns out that damn, like we're like the genre is actually chock full of amazing writers and singers and players that they just needed a different field to play in, and that was the Americana genre that has now become so extraordinarily prevalent and powerful.
Well, I like that optimistic message, and I am in agreement with you. I think there is a lot going on out there that is great, and I am optimistic about the future of this area of music too. All right, Gabe, I think we have time for maybe one more question, kind of a bigger picture question if we can. You've been pretty productive by today's industry standards, fourth record in about 4 years, lots of touring. We've talked about how this record is different from your previous ones, maybe an evolution of sorts. When you think about where you have come in that relatively short period of time, where you think you might be headed, as a creative person, is there anything you think you've gotten better at, or maybe something or some things you are actively working on getting better at?
Yeah. And what I'm inspired a lot by is my community of songwriters in Nashville. I kind of came up with a dozen, maybe 24 like local writers, right? Who all moved here from elsewhere, and we all kind of came up playing the same songwriter rounds all the time. And that was just how it had to be done. And it's still the way it has to be done. You just go to every open mic, and every gig that you can, every round that you can get yourself on is good. And none of these pay, and it's usually in a loud honky tonk bar. But it's how we've all become kind of trained as storytellers and songwriters in the Nashville scene, and that's something that the Nashville songwriter round scene does very well. Being part of a music community is the best thing that has ever happened to me, and somehow the folks in my little friend group have always cheered for each other, mm-hmm. and championed each other's music, gone to each other's shows, and even when we're out on the road, maybe my buddy Ben will be like in the next town over, and if I'm playing a gig tomorrow, maybe I'll swing through and try to see him, stuff like that. So much fun. And I will say Nashville, is a very positive, pretty uplifting music community, in my opinion. There's definitely a lot of competition. There's definitely some nature of like, only so many of us, have an opportunity to get to the next level. Like some people have to wait longer than others to get, those opportunities to shine. And then when the opportunity comes, you shine your heart out. So I will say that one thing myself and my team has gotten better at is essentially continuing to support all the other writers and all the other songwriters and artists that I consider my close friends, and promoting them as much as we promote ourselves. Because when I see my buddies succeeding, I try to support them and as much as I can. And yeah, sometimes that's performative. Sometimes that's making a post on social media and hoping your fans, will hop onto their train and go support your friends too. Yeah. But most importantly, it's like my buddy Vinny released a record last night, and he's like one of those writers that's a fixture in the Nashville like independent writing community, and he just put out a record last night, and I'm on the road, but the first thing I do is give him a text right at 11:30 p.m. when the record drops, and tell him congrats, and then try to get tune other people in on it, because the Nashville network is so powerful. Like you could, the degrees of separation are incredible. Like one person sending one text could lead you to your next gig. And so I was all that to say, like, if there's something that we've gotten better at or improving on and hope to improve on, is fostering that community that we don't just sit around and kind of congratulate ourselves and pat each other on the back. That like really it's about going out and being at your buddies' shows and supporting them, and truly fostering like a community in Nashville that people can, I guess, feel at home at and feel like they can trust people. So yeah, the Nashville music community, that is something that I'll always continue to work with and hopefully make more inviting to everybody that moves there with a guitar and a dream.
I'll tell you, I have interviewed a number of people who make Nashville their musical home, mostly in the Americana scene. And what you're talking about might surprise some people, but I do get this consistent story about the community of people and the support networks that the artists have created and how they lean on each other and support each other. And it's great to hear. And like I say, I think a lot of people outside the music industry might be surprised that there is this cooperation and this community building. And I just think it's great. And it's good for everyone. It makes your life easier and happier, but it also creates opportunities for you, like you said. So
totally,
it's great to hear you say that. All right, Gabe, I think I've taken up enough of your time. I really appreciate you sitting down with us today. Everyone should go listen to this great record, Drink the River, and they should go try and find you on tour. It shouldn't be hard. 150 dates a year, right?
we're probably coming near or through your town, so look us up.
Tell you what, I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you what, I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you